Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today, we're diving into a tragic yet fascinating story titled, From Hope to Ruin. This is the heartbreaking tale of the Donner Party, a group of American pioneers in the mid-1800s. He set out full of optimism for a brighter future in California, only to face unimaginable horrors that turn their dream into a nightmare. It's a classic example of how high hopes can spiral into total disaster, and it's packed with real historical facts that still shock people today. Picture this. It's 1846, and America is buzzing with excitement about westward expansion. The country is pushing the idea of manifest destiny, the belief that Americans were meant to spread across the continent. Thousands of families are packing up their wagons, dreaming of fertile land, gold rushes, and a fresh start away from the crowded East Coast. Newspapers and guidebooks are hyping up new routes to California, promising shorter, easier paths. That's where the Donner Party comes in. They were a group of about 87 immigrants, led by brothers George and Jacob Donner, along with another family leader named James Reed. Most were from Illinois and Missouri, regular folks like farmers, families with kids, even some wealthy ones, looking for adventure. They started out in spring from Independence, Missouri, joining a larger wagon train. Everyone was optimistic. They had plenty of supplies, livestock, and high spirits. Letters from early in the journey talk about beautiful scenery, good weather, and the thrill of the unknown. But here's where things start going wrong. The group decided to take a shortcut, promoted in a popular guidebook called The Hastings Cutoff, named after Lansford Hastings. He claimed it would shave hundreds of miles off the traditional Oregon Trail route. Sounded great on paper. Faster arrival in California, more time to settle before winter. Many in the party were eager, full of that pioneer hope. They split off from the main trail in Wyoming and headed south toward what is now Utah. Fact: the Hastings Cutoff wasn't even tested by Hastings himself with wagons. He had only gone through on horseback. What the Donner Party didn't know was that this route was brutal: dense forests, steep mountains, and a massive salt desert that stretched for 80 miles with no water. As they pushed through the Wasatch Mountains, progress slowed to a crawl. They had to hack through thick brush with axes, sometimes advancing only a mile or two a day. Wagons broke down constantly, oxen died from exhaustion, and supplies started running low. Tensions rose, arguments broke out, and James Reed even killed a man in a fight and got banished from the group. By the time they crossed the Great Salt Lake Desert, they were weeks behind schedule. People were dehydrated, starving, and desperate. Hope was fading, but they pressed on, believing California was just ahead. Little did they know, the worst was yet to come. Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 of From Hope to Ruin, the chilling story of the Donner Party. Last time, we left off with the group finally emerging from the brutal Great Salt Lake Desert, exhausted, weeks behind schedule, and already low on food. But they still had hope. California was close, right? They could make it before winter. After the desert, they pushed into the rugged terrain of present-day Nevada and then up into the Sierra Nevada mountains. By late October 1846, they were racing against time. Early snowstorms started hitting, unusual for that time of year, but a massive weather system was building. On October 28, they reached what is now Donner Lake, just below the summit of the Sierra Nevada. They were so close. Truckee Pass, now Donner Pass, was only about 7 miles away, and beyond that, a downhill path to the Sacramento Valley. Fact: the winter of 1846 to 1847 turned out to be one of the snowiest on record in the Sierra Nevada. Some accounts say snow piled up to 20 feet deep in places. Modern meteorologists have confirmed it was an extreme event. The Donner Party tried multiple times to push over the pass, but heavy snow kept forcing them back. Wagons got stuck, animals froze or starved, and people were weakening fast. By early November, they realized they were trapped. They had no choice but to set up makeshift camps around Donner Lake and a nearby meadow called Alder Creek. The group split. Most families at the lake, the Donners themselves a few miles away at Alder Creek. They built crude cabins from wagon parts, pine branches, and whatever they could find. Hides and quilts covered the roofs. At first, they rationed their remaining cattle and food supplies, thinking rescue would come soon or the snow would melt. But the storms kept coming. Blizzard after blizzard, snow buried everything. Travel became impossible. Even walking short distances meant sinking waist deep. Hunger set in quickly. By December, they had slaughtered the last of their oxen and even family pets. Then they started boiling hides, bones, and leather to make a horrible glue-like soup. Children cried from hunger. Adults grew weak and depressed. Some diaries from survivors later described the constant gnawing, pain in their stomachs. On December 16th, a small group of 17 of the strongest members decided to make a desperate attempt on makeshift snowshoes. They called themselves the Forlorn Hope. Their plan was to cross the pass on foot and bring back help from Sutter's Fort in California. It was a gamble. No one had ever crossed the Sierra in deep winter like this. As Christmas approached, the trapped families huddled in their freezing cabins, burning furniture for warmth, praying for a break in the weather. Little did they know how much worse things were about to get. Hope to ruin. We're deep into the Donner Party tragedy now. By late December 1846, the group trapped in the Sierra Nevada was in serious trouble. Deep snow, no food left, and temperatures dropping way below zero. People were dying, and desperation was taking over. Let's talk about that escape group I mentioned last time, the Forlorn Hope. Those 17 people who left on December 16th with homemade snowshoes thought they had a shot at reaching help. They carried almost no food, just a little dried meat and some biscuits. The plan was to cross the 7000-foot pass and hike about 100 miles to civilization. Fact, what followed was one of the most grueling survival stories in American history. They battled 20-foot snowdrifts, blinding blizzards, and freezing nights. Within days, they were completely lost, wandering in circles. Their snowshoes broke, feet froze, and starvation hit hard. By Christmas Day, some were too weak to go on. One man, Charles Berger, begged the others to leave him. They did. Over the next week, more fell behind or died in the snow. On December 25, they realized they had to do the unthinkable to survive. Historical records and survivor accounts confirm that members of the Forlorn Hope resorted to eating the bodies of those who had died. It started with the dead, but as things got worse, evidence points to murder to provide food for the rest. Back at the camps, things were just as bad. January 1847 brought more storms. By mid-January, almost no one had eaten in days. People lay in their cabins, too weak to move. Patrick Breen, one of the few who kept a diary, wrote entries like, "Still no food. Mrs. Murphy said here yesterday that she thought she would commence on Milt and eat him. I don't think she has done so yet. It is distressing." Children were dying first, then adults. The first deaths at the lake camp came in early January. Bodies were left outside because no one had the strength to bury them in the frozen ground. By February, survivors later admitted they too turned to eating the dead to stay alive. It wasn't a choice anymore. It was live or die. Meanwhile, word finally reached California settlements that a large party was trapped in the mountains, but heavy snow blocked all roads. The first relief party didn't even set out until mid-February. The situation was now beyond desperate. Hope was almost gone. Part 4 is going to cover the relief efforts and the horrifying discoveries rescuers made. It's intense, so brace yourselves. Hey guys, welcome back to part 4 of From Hope to Ruin. We're at the darkest point of the Donner Party story. By February 1847, the survivors in the mountain camps had been trapped for over 3 months. Most had now resorted to eating the bodies of those who died. It was no longer a secret or a shame. It was the only way to stay alive. Diaries and later interviews confirmed that human flesh was portioned out carefully to keep the living going, especially the children. Fact, archaeological digs at the Donner sites in the 20th century found cut marks on human bones, consistent with butchering, and boiled bone fragments in fire pits, hard evidence that backs up the survivor accounts. Meanwhile, in California, people were finally organizing rescue efforts. The first relief party, led by Aquila Glover and Daniel Rhodes, left Johnson's ranch on February 4th with supplies and mules. But even they struggled through deep snow. They didn't reach the lake camp until February 18th, over a month after the forlorn hope had left. What they found was horrifying. James Reed, who had been banished earlier and made it to California safely, joined a later relief group. But the first rescuers described walking into a scene from hell: half-buried cabins, emaciated survivors with hollow eyes, and human remains scattered outside. Some people were so far gone mentally, they didn't want to leave. One rescuer wrote that a woman was cooking what looked like meat over the fire. It was part of her own deceased child. The first relief managed to take out 21 survivors, mostly women and young children who could still walk with help. They left food behind and promised to return quickly. But another massive storm hit right after they left, burying the pass again. A second relief party arrived on March 1. This time, conditions were even worse. Some survivors had gone completely mad from hunger and trauma. Rescuers reported finding one man, Louis Kesselberg, living alone in a cabin surrounded by remains. He was one of the last to leave. The forlorn hope story also ended around this time, after weeks of wandering and surviving on the dead and allegedly killing 2 men. For food, only 7 of the original 17 made it to safety. 5 women and 2 men stumbled into a Native American village and then reached Sutter's Fort on February 18. Their arrival finally confirmed the disaster and spurred more rescues. 4 relief expeditions in total brought out survivors between February and April. When the last party left in late April, only 1 man remained to guard the property, Louis Kesselberg. Out of the original 87 who started with the Donner Group, only 45 survived. Many were scarred for life. Next part, we'll talk about the aftermath, the accusations, and how this story became American legend. Hey everyone, welcome back to the final part of From Hope to Ruin. We've covered the nightmare in the mountains. Now let's talk about what happened after the survivors made it out, the fallout, and why this story still grips us almost 180 years later. The 45 survivors who reached safety in California were in rough shape. Many were severely malnourished. Some had frostbite that led to amputations, and almost all carried deep psychological scars. Children who had lived through it were traumatized for life. Families were shattered. Parents lost kids. Kids lost parents. Siblings gone forever. Fact: of the 87 people who started with the Donner and Reed families, exactly 45 survived. The death toll was highest among single men and older adults. Women and children had a better survival rate, partly because rescuers prioritized them, and because some accounts suggest they were given more food from the remains. Almost immediately, rumors exploded. Newspapers across the country ran sensational headlines about cannibalism in the mountains. Some stories were exaggerated for shock value, but the core truth was undeniable. Survivors were both pitied and judged. A few, like Louis Kesselberg, the last man at the camp, faced lifelong accusations of murder and stealing property. He sued for defamation and won a token amount, but his reputation never recovered. James Reed, the banished leader who helped organize rescues from California, was hailed as a hero by some. He reunited with his family and later became a successful businessman. George Donner's wife, Tamsin, stayed behind to care for him and died one of the last. Her loyalty became part of the legend. The Hastings cutoff was discredited forever. Lansford Hastings, the guy who promoted the untested shortcut, tried to defend himself, but mostly faded into obscurity. The disaster highlighted how dangerous bad information could be in the age of westward migration. Over time, the Donner Party story became an American cautionary tale about hubris, the power of nature, and the extreme limits of human survival. Books, movies, documentaries, even TV episodes have retold it. The site at Donner Pass is now a state historic park with a museum and memorials. Today, historians emphasize that these were ordinary people pushed to the absolute edge. They didn't set out planning for horror. They were chasing the same American dream that drove millions west. Bad decisions, bad luck, and brutal weather turned hope into ruin. That's the full story. A dream of California that ended in one of the darkest chapters of pioneer history. Thanks for sticking with me through this heavy series. If you want more real-life survival stories or pioneer tales, let me know in the comments. Hit that like button if this one got to you, and subscribe for more. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching the full From Hope to Ruin series. The response has been incredible. You guys really connected with this wild piece of American history. A lot of you asked for more, so here's a bonus part where I dive into some lesser-known facts, debunk a few myths, and share what we can actually learn from the Donner Party today. First off, a common myth. People often think the whole group turned into raging cannibals right away. Not true. Survivor accounts and historians agree that no one ate human flesh until after natural deaths from starvation started happening about 2 months into being trapped, and even then, most did it only as a last resort. There's evidence of just 2 possible murders for food in the Forlorn Hope group, but nothing proven back at the main camps. Another cool fact, Native Americans actually tried to help. Local Washoe and Miwok people knew the mountains well, and sometimes approached the camps with food offers, but fear and language barriers kept most interactions limited. One survivor, William Eddy, credited a native guide for saving his life during escape. What about blame? A lot falls on that Hastings cutoff, but the Donner Party also made other choices like starting late in the season and carrying luxury items, pianos, fine china that weighed down the wagons instead of extra food. Hindsight is 20/20, but it shows how small decisions snowball in survival situations. Modern science has looked at this too. Studies of the weather data confirm 1846-47 was an outlier, a once-in-a-century snow event caused by a strong La Niña pattern. Climate experts say something similar could happen again with global weirding. The site today is peaceful but powerful. If you ever drive I-80 through Donner Pass, stop at the Donner Memorial State Park. The pioneer statue there is 22 feet tall, the exact depth of the snow that winter. You can hike the trails, see the actual spots where cabins stood, and read survivor letters in the museum. Biggest lesson? Nature doesn't care about your dreams or plans. Respect it, prepare thoroughly, and don't trust unproven shortcuts whether it's a trail in 1846 or some life hack today. Also, community matters. The families that shared food and stayed calm lasted longer than those who fought. That's it for the Donner Party. If you want me to cover another insane survival story like the Andes plane crash, the whale ship Essex that inspired Moby Dick, or the Greely Arctic expedition, just say the word in the comments. Thanks again for watching. Drop a like if this series hit hard, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey guys, you all blew up the comments asking for even more on the Donner Party, so here's part 7a. Deep dive into some of the most haunting personal stories that didn't fit in the main series. These are the individual human moments that really make this tragedy hit home. First, let's talk about Virginia Reed, the 13-year-old daughter of James Reed. She was one of the toughest survivors, banished with her dad after the fight. No, actually, her father was banished, but the family stayed with the main group. Virginia rode horseback, helped drive wagons, and kept everyone's spirits up. After rescue, she wrote a famous letter to her cousin back east. Never take no cutoffs and hurry along as fast as you can. That line became legendary advice for future pioneers. She lived to 81, married, had kids, and always defended the survivors' choices. Then there's William Eddy, probably the hardest fighter of them all. He was part of the Forlorn Hope, and one of the few men who made it out. Eddy lost his wife and 2 young kids in the camps, starving and half delirious. He kept going for days with almost no food, even after others gave up. When he finally reached safety, he immediately turned around and joined a relief party to go back for others. Talk about unbreakable. One of the saddest is the Miwok Guide's two Native Americans named Salvador and Luis, who worked for John Sutter. They joined the second relief party in March. Both men carried starving children out on their backs through brutal snow. On the way back down, they became too weak from lack of food. Rescuers shared what little they had, but it wasn't enough. Salvador and Luis died in the snow. The children they saved lived. Their sacrifice is often overlooked in the story. Fact, there's also the story of little Patty Reed's doll. 8-year-old Patty hid her tiny wooden doll in her dress when they had to abandon almost everything. That doll survived the entire ordeal and is now on display at Sutter's Fort Museum, a tiny symbol of childhood in the middle of horror. And we can't skip Tamsin Donner, George Donner's wife. Educated, kind, and devoted, she refused to leave her dying husband even when rescuers begged her to go with the children. She stayed in the Alder Creek camp until the end. Her body was later found carefully arranged, suggesting someone likely Keseberg protected it longer than others. These personal stories remind us these weren't just statistics, they were real families with dreams, fears, and incredible strength or heartbreaking weakness. That's all for the Donner Party. I hope this series honored their memory while telling the truth. If you want another multi-part survival saga, vote in the comments. Andy's 72 crash, Shackleton's endurance, or the Batavia shipwreck mutiny. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications. See you soon. Hey, everyone, you guys are unstoppable. The comments are flooded with requests for one more Donner Party part, so here's part 8. The wildest what-ifs, modern connections, and a few crazy coincidences that tie this 1846 tragedy to today. Let's wrap this saga up with some mind-blowing stuff. First big, what if the Donner Party had just stuck to the regular Oregon Trail route instead of taking the Hastings cutoff? Historians agree they would have made it to California with weeks to spare. That one decision, trusting a flashy guidebook over proven paths, added at least 150 extra miles and cost them everything. It's the ultimate lesson in not chasing shortcuts that sound too good to be true. Another wild one. They were literally days away from safety multiple times. In late October, they camped at what's now Donner Lake and could see the pass. If they'd pushed just 1 or 2 more days before the first big storm hit, most would have made it over. Bad weather timing sealed their fate. Modern connection. You've probably driven right past the tragedy without knowing it. Interstate 80 runs straight through Donner Pass. Millions of cars zoom over the exact spot every year. Next time you're heading to Tahoe or Reno in winter and see those snow walls along the highway, remember, that's nothing compared to the 20-30 feet that buried the pioneers. Crazy coincidence. One survivor's descendant became super famous. Margaret Reed, Virginia's mom, had a great-granddaughter named Patty Hearst. Yes, the same Patty Hearst who was kidnapped by the SLA in 1974 and later joined them in bank robberies. The Reed family went from eating shoe leather in the snow to front page news again over a century later. Fact, in 2006, archaeologists found a hearth at the Alder Creek site with boiled bones, final physical proof of what happened. They even used DNA to confirm some remains belonged to the Donner family dogs, showing people ate pets before turning to the rest. Today, survival experts study the Donner Party as a case study in group dynamics under stress. Things like leadership fights, Reed's banishment, hoarding vs sharing food, and how women and kids survived better because of cooperation. It's all taught in wilderness survival courses. Last thought, this wasn't some freak group of unlucky idiots. They were normal families chasing opportunity, just like millions of Americans before and after. Nature won that round, but their story keeps teaching us humility. That's really it now, 8 parts deep. Thank you all for riding this out with me. This has been one of the most engaged series on the channel. Drop your favorite fact from the whole thing in the comments. If you want a full-length compilation video of all parts with extra visuals, smash that like button and let me know. Until the next wild history dive. Take care. Drive safe through those mountains, and I'll catch you soon. Hey, everyone. I seriously can't believe we're at part 9. You all are legends for keeping this Donner Party series alive in the comments. This one's special. I'm answering some of the top questions you've been asking across all the parts, plus sharing a couple of final chilling details that didn't make the earlier cuts. First big question: was there really murder in the main camps? Not just the forlorn hope? Most historians say no solid proof. All the evidence points to people only using bodies after natural deaths from starvation or exposure. The accusations mostly swirled around Louis Kesselberg. Later on, people claimed he killed Tamsin Donner for food or gold, but he denied it till his dying day, and no court ever charged him. It's more likely the rumors grew out of trauma and gossip. Another one you asked a ton: how did the survivors taste? You know, the human flesh? A few gave indirect answers in interviews years later. They described it as tough, stringy, and tasting like strong beef or mutton, but the liver and brains were apparently the most palatable. They boiled it for hours to make it edible. Yeah, it's grim, but they were honest about it. Did anyone refuse to eat it and die instead? Yes, at least 2. One was an older man named George Donner's teamster who starved rather than partake. Another was a mother who reportedly chose death over it, though accounts vary. Cool detail: some survivors brought recipes west. No joke. One family carried a cookbook that made it through the snow, and it's preserved today. Meanwhile, they were boiling shoes and bones. You also wanted to know about long-term effects. Many survivors struggled with what we'd now call PTSD, nightmares, guilt, avoidance of meat for years, but a lot rebuilt impressive lives. Virginia Reed became a respected California pioneer. William Eddy ran a newspaper, and the Breen family thrived in San Jose. The kids who lived through it often grew up fiercely independent. Final wild fact: in 1891, a huge forest fire swept through the Sierra and exposed bones at the lake site. Locals collected them and buried them under the Pioneer Monument that still stands today. So when you visit the statue, you're literally at a gravesite. That's the absolute end of the road for the Donner Party series 9 parts. Thousands of words and some of the heaviest history out there. Thank you all for watching, commenting, and sharing your thoughts. This one clearly hit deep. If you want me to go this hard on another story, Andy's crash, Franklin's lost Arctic expedition, or the Batavia massacre, vote loud in the comments. Hit like if this series stayed with you. Subscribe for more real history, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey everyone, we've officially hit double digits. Part 10 of From Hope to Ruin. You all refuse to let this story die. So for this grand finale, giving you something different. A full ranking of the top 10 most jaw-dropping survival decisions the Donner Party made. From smartest moves that saved lives to the absolute worst calls that doomed them. Let's count them down. Number 10. Bringing luxury items like pianos and fine china. It slowed the wagons and took up space that could have held extra food. Minor in hindsight, but every pound mattered. Number 9. Banishing James Reed after the fight. He was a strong leader and organizer. Once in California, he became the driving force behind rescues. Keeping him might have changed everything. Number 8. Trusting Native American warnings. A few tribes tried to warn them about the heavy snow coming, but most pioneers ignored it. Listening could have pushed them harder over the pass. Number 7. The forlorn hope. Leaving in December. Brave as hell, but too late and underprepared. If they'd gone earlier with better gear, or might have made it. Number 6. Prioritizing children and women in rescues. Cold math, but it worked. Higher survival rate for them. Pure human instinct kicking in right. Number 5. Making snowshoes from wagon parts. Genius improvisation that let the forlorn hope even attempt escape. Without those, zero chance. Number 4. Keeping diaries like Patrick Breen's. His daily entries are why we know so much detail today. That calm record keeping amid chaos is unreal. Number 3. Tamsin Donner staying with her husband. Heartbreaking loyalty. She was offered escape multiple times, but refused. pure devotion. Number 2, taking the Hastings cutoff. The single worst decision, added weeks, exhausted everyone, and put them in the path of the storm. Almost everything bad flows from this. Number 1, the absolute best, the survivors who shared food, stayed calm, and cooperated. Families like the Breens and Reeds, who rationed together and kept morale up, lasted longest. In survival, community beats individual strength every time. That's my top 10. History isn't just fate, it's choices piling up. We've now done 10 full parts on one of the wildest stories in American history, from hope on the prairie to ruin in the snow, and everything in between. Thank you all for the insane support, the views, comments, shares. This series wouldn't have gone this far without you. I'm calling it here. The Donner Party saga is officially complete. If you want me to start a new epic series, vote in the comments. Uruguay rugby team Andes Crash Alive, Shackleton's Antarctic Nightmare, or the Franklin Expedition's Arctic Doom. Smash like if you made it to part 10. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in whatever crazy story we tackle next. Take care, stay prepared, and never take shortcuts in the mountains. Hey, everyone, welcome to part 12, the absolute final chapter of From Hope to Ruin. You legends pushed this Donner Party series to places I never imagined, and I'm grateful for every comment, like, and share. For this true send-off, let's step back and ask the big question. What does this 180-year-old tragedy actually mean for us today, in 2025? First, it's a brutal reminder that nature is still the boss. We've got heated cars, GPS, weather apps, and chains on tires, zooming over Donner Pass daily, but one freak storm can shut I-80 down for days. Avalanche warnings, whiteouts, stranded truckers, it happens every winter. The Sierra Nevada hasn't changed. We've just gotten better at pretending we've tamed it. Second, the shortcut obsession. The Hastings cutoff was the 1846 version of a viral life hack, or some influencer promising a faster route to success. Skip the proven path. Take this secret trail, arrive richer and quicker. Sound familiar? Crypto pumps, get rich quick schemes, untested business pivots. We still fall for glossy promises that ignore real risks. Third, group dynamics in crisis. The Donner Party shows how fast society breaks down when resources vanish. Fights, banishments, hoarding, blame games, but also incredible sacrifice, sharing, and resilience. Modern survival psychologists study it alongside plane crashes and shipwrecks. Key takeaway: calm, cooperative groups survive longer than selfish ones. Fourth, information and misinformation. They trusted one unproven guidebook over experienced trail advice. Today, it's social media echo chambers, fake news, or AI-generated facts. Bad info can still kill dreams or worse. Fifth, the human spirit. Out of unimaginable horror came stories of loyalty. Tamsin staying with George, courage, the forlorn hope, and rebuilding lives against stigma. Survivors didn't hide. Many thrived, raised families, helped build California. That grit is pure American pioneer DNA. Final thought: the Donner Party isn't just a cannibal horror story. It's about hope pushing people forward, hubris blinding them, and survival revealing who we really are when everything's stripped away. 12 parts later, that's the full circle. From bright dreams on the prairie to hard lessons that still echo today. Thank you all for making this the longest, most engaged series on the channel. I read every comment, and you made it special. We're done here. No more Donner parts, promise this time. Now vote for the next epic. 1. The 1972 Andes rugby team crash, the real, alive story. 2. Shackleton's impossible Antarctic survival. Or 3. The terrifying true events behind Moby Dick, the whale ship Essex. Drop your pick below. Smash like if you watched all 12. Subscribe for whatever comes next, and I'll see you there. Stay safe, take the proven path, and keep chasing hope, just smarter.